I now call the meeting of the May 14th Planning Commission to order. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Pollier? Sorry for getting started a little late. We're having a little technological difficulty, but we're all good to go. Could I have a roll call, please?
Greenberg.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Mako.
Here.
Pollier. Here. Shapaka.
Here.
Suriano.
Here.
Tamarkin.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any additions or corrections to the published agenda?
No, sir.
Thank you. Next order of business is the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the April 23rd meeting?
So moved. Greenberg.
Moved by Mr. Greenberg. Is there a second?
Second, Pollier.
Second by Ms. Pollier. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Pollier.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Shapaka.
Yes.
Suriano.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes. Thank you. At this point, would anybody that wishes to address the commission tonight, please direct your attention to our Assistant City Attorney, Mr. Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant has 10 minutes to present, and additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name and address. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. I'd like to add to Mr. Roth's instructions that if you are addressing the commission tonight, please make sure that you speak your mind during the public comment portion of the meeting. Once the public comment portion is closed, there is not an opportunity to address the commission again. We do have 2 projects tonight. One project has 2 applications associated with it. So we'll move into the first project, and I'll ask the clerk to please read the application into the record.
We have B-0013-2025 to consider a variance application to vary section 1103.09E, small lot residential of the codified ordinances of the city of Gahanna for property located at 307 Rivers End Road, parcel ID 025-000666, current zoning R3, small lot residential, Don Mack applicant.
Thank you. We'll now turn the meeting over to the administration for their presentation.
The first application of the night is a variance at 307 Rivers End Road. Here on the zoning map, you can see this parcel as well as all of the adjacent parcels are zoned R3. The applicant is requesting approval of a variance to allow a detached garage within a side yard setback. The garage is 900 square feet and located entirely to the rear of the existing house. For all properties zoned R3, the side yard setback is 5 feet, and this is the lowest side yard setback for any zoning district. The garage is only 3 feet from the south property line, so it encroaches 2 feet into the required setback. There was a building permit approved for the garage, and that approved permit showed the garage at 5 feet from the side property line. When a foundation inspection was performed, the inspector found that the garage was only 3 feet from the property line, and the inspection failed because it did not match the approved plans. Because the garage is no longer compliant with the zoning code, a variance application is required. The applicant states that the garage was built in the wrong location because they didn't notice the 5-foot setback shown on the plans. Here is a site plan. The location of the garage is shown in purple. You can see it's entirely to the rear of the main building, and it's 3 feet from that south property line. Here are some elevations of the garage. That top left elevation is the front, and that's what faces the right-of-way. Here are some images of the property. The left photo is the current state of the garage. You can see that the foundation was installed very close to the fence. The image on the right is a street view photo from July of last year. The red box shows the approximate location of the garage, so a portion of it would be visible from the right-of-way. There is one variance associated with this application. It is for Chapter 1103.09E, which states that accessory structures must be at least 5 feet from the side property line. As mentioned, the detached garage is only 3 foot from the side property line. This is the variance criteria that must be met in order for the application to be approved. One criteria of note is the very last one that states the practical difficulty could be eliminated by some other method, even if the solution is less convenient or more costly to achieve. One of the reasons that the applicant has requested a variance is because they state that the project, or it would be costly to move the garage, but that cannot be taken into account when assessing a variance application. Staff recommends disapproval of the variance as submitted. Since the garage was initially approved at 5 feet from the side property line, there is sufficient room on the site for the garage to meet all setback requirements. The variance criteria has not been met and cost is not a factor. However, the neighbor to the south did state that they support the variance, and they are the neighbor that's the closest to the garage. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open the public comment portion for this application, and if the applicant is present, if they would like to come forward and speak to the application.
Yes, I appreciate it. I'm Don Mack. I'm from 307 Rivers End Road. I guess in my part of the thing, the extenuating circumstances, I bought this property. I planned to live in Gahanna till they moved me, my children moved me to a nursing home. But the home was older. It's a 1960 build. It required a lot of extensive renovation. My extenuating circumstances are that I started the project, I actually bought the home in July, started the project in August. I had great difficulty with the contractor I had. Unfortunately, had to fire that contractor in January, and then had to get a second contractor where English is not their first language. And so I had extensive work with the Planning Commission because the driveway was in question initially and had extensive things because initially they required a sidewalk to be in the driveway when there's no sidewalk in this neighborhood. So I was aware of a 1-foot setback, but I was not aware of the 5-foot setback. And of course, my day job is not an architect. I did not read the plans either. And then with the loss of my contractor, that caused the problem. I guess the other thing that I think is in support of it, I wouldn't have proceeded with the variance if it was a safety issue, but I know that the city fire and also police signed off saying that at least 3 feet is no longer a safety issue. And of course, the other big part was my neighbor, Caleb Redfern, has already called in and also notified me he did not have a concern. The thing you can see in that one picture of that of the lot, along this area there were 2 very large trees that were right against his fence and putting leaves and also debris into his yard. So he is very happy that I've removed those in preparation for this. So those would be my comments. Any questions for me? Or?
Stay tuned, please.
Thank you.
I did not receive any speaker slips, but is there anybody from the public that would like to address the Planning Commission for this application? Seeing none, I will close the public portion of this application and turn it over to the commission for questions, starting with Mr. Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mack, I have a question. You had one neighbor in support. What about the other neighbors? Have you heard from them, or?
No, I've been in contact with all the neighbors around me as I was cleaning up the lot, because I also removed trees from the back, and all of them, again, have been very pleased that I cleaned up this lot from where it had been. But in preparation for this, I for sure contacted Caleb because it is right against him. But the other ones, the back part where the power line is 5 feet. And so I have not heard anything from that neighbor, and I haven't heard anything from the neighbors on the other side.
Okay, so just to clarify, the only area where you're seeking the variance is along the fence line?
Right.
That's 3 feet?
That's 3 feet instead of the 5 feet required.
Okay.
The back one is already at 5 feet, and of course, everything else is away from the other neighbors and the lot lines.
Clerk, did we have any other neighbors write in?
No, no additional.
Okay. And when did you figure out that this was out of compliance?
The city had already sent out someone to inspect the footer, because as you can see on the other one where you see where the foundation is, you can see that they dug down quite a bit. And the footer was in place, and actually from our city, Mike Frey was out and did the footer inspection and approved it and did not make any comment. It was only when the outside inspector for the foundation came out and said, I believe this is too close to your lot line, and put it as unapproved. And sure enough, then when I looked at that, then I saw the 5 foot. That was when I first discovered it. That was about 2 weeks before I submitted the variance.
Okay. No other questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Suriano.
I just have a question. If the accessory structure is 5 feet from the rear property line, is it in compliance with the rear setback?
Yes.
Okay. Does the structure, is it built too big or just in the wrong spot? Meaning for the rest of the, like, are the dimensions of the garage as they should be, or is one wall too far, or?
No, the dimensions are correct. It is 30 by 30. And so to get it to code, we'd have to shove the whole thing over 2 feet.
And have you talked with the contractor about moving, or is the entirety of the foundation installed? So it's hard to see from this picture, I guess would be the either north or
Right.
east.
Yeah, it would just be going in that picture, it would be moving to the right, the 2 feet.
Okay. Have you had conversations with the contractor about moving the 2 walls of the foundation? I know it looks like there's reinforcement and it's already,
Yeah. He says it's going to be pretty time-consuming, labor-intensive, and he estimated $8,000 to $10,000 in cost to do that, and then to delay, of course, the time in doing that. I know cost is not a factor according to the Planning Commission, but.
well, I'm just curious if it was a mistake, who made the mistake, and if it was the contractor not reading the drawings correctly. That's not on the owner. Those are my questions.
Mr. Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the fence there your fence or the neighbor's fence?
That's the neighbor's fence. There was a fence on the property when I first purchased it, a short, sort of the old galvanized type link fence was there against his fence, but it was also through those 2 trees that I removed, so I removed the trees and the fence.
Okay. Only question I have.
Mr. Shapaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The follow-up on Mr. Soriano's direction, so the overall cost of the garage is it a $35,000 garage, a $40,000 garage?
So I think the current estimate, which as I'm learning in construction is never what it actually ends up, is $60,000, since it's 30 by 30. It's
30 by
also,
30, with the garage door openings that you had, if you just shaved that wall off 2 feet and moved it over in compliance, the $8,000 to $10,000 seems a little high. I'm not asking you to do that, I'm just looking at the situation that you're in currently. It could be moved, it looks like it doesn't affect the operation of the doors, the overhead doors that you have.
the other factor that's shown there, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. The other factor is the solar.
Solar panels there, you know, on
right.
the south side. So how high is that wall there on the top left picture? Is that an 8-foot-high wall, or is that a 4-foot-high wall? Top left, on the left-hand side.
Top left. I would have to look at the drawings. I believe that it is like, it's 3 or 4 feet to allow for that slope of the solar panels.
So if I did have to cut that off, it's really not affecting, it would have affected the layout of the solar panels.
That's the current thing.
So I'm inclined with the fence that is there now. The reason we have a 5-foot clearance is debris, things growing, your ability to get in there and clean it out. It looked like on the other side, which would be the west side, there is no fence, or is there a low fence, chain link fence?
So you mean
Yeah, beyond the fence?
Sure,
beyond-
sure. Yeah, there is a low fence. That's the same type of fence that was on this side, the south side. It's a low chain link fence about, what would it be, 3 feet tall? And then his fence is more like 5 to 6 feet.
6-foot privacy fence. So if I would be a little bit more inclined to kind of just agree, like, yeah, you know, it moved over, it was an honest mistake, but you're creating a hazard by having that 6-foot-high fence there. Would you be opposed to removing that portion along the building so that it's open and you can't store anything in there?
So I'm not sure if I understand what you're,
The 6-foot-high fence coming from the screen where you're at, as you're working your way back to the foundation, if you remove the fence from there on back to the corner, because that would eliminate the trapped area between your property and your building.
right, that's the neighbor's fence.
That's the neighbor's fence,
Yeah.
right?
So I mean, I would have to get his approval to remove a fence.
You would, but would he be opposed to doing that? And in essence, he would be gaining 2 feet or something for landscaping. It's just,
I haven't-
you're creating a hazard with it so close to the property line. If there's no fence there, it's easier to clean, is how I see it.
Right. It's still, with the 3 foot, I mean, I'm able to easily walk there and clean there, and as you can see, I mean, you don't see, I think you can see in the picture that was taken in July there to the right, that large tree that was there. And if you look right here in the very front of the picture, you can see the base of that tree, and there's a hole kind of there. So, I mean, I have cleaned it and plan to clean it. And it's 3 foot, I mean, I can easily get through there to clean it.
So nothing can be stored there. I'm taking your
Right.
word, you're not going to put anything in there or,
No, no. And like I said, with the garage, I don't want anything there because that's what the solar is for
that
too.
was the other question. Since you have the roof line so low, it's easy to hop on it. And then you got a 6-foot-high fence, not that that's going to block your panels, but it just seemed kind of odd to have a 6-foot-high fence next to such a low wall on that side, that if that was just a chain link fence, it seemed like that would be an easier place to clean and get access to or see if something's growing in there. I don't know how often you're gonna walk around your garage, so I'm taking a precaution of, you're never gonna walk around your garage. I mean,
Certainly,
yeah.
certainly.
And this got approved, this is a question for Maddie, so this building got approved for square footage and is compliant for a small lot.
Correct.
In the driveway along the side, there was no variance required to add more concrete to the lot?
No, there's just a 1-foot setback for driveways and residential, and that requirement is met.
All right. Thank you for clarification. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few quick questions. You had mentioned that you had gone through two contractors with this. Would it be a correct assumption on my part to say that the original contractor was the one who dug the foundation for the footer?
No, the original contractor actually was working on the inside of the home and was fired at that process. And it was the second contractor, like I said, there's a language issue there for me with him, but it was a second contractor who dug that foundation and actually put the footer in and did the foundation work.
Okay. Coming back to the plans which were approved, would it be fair to say, based on your understanding, that they were able to see that there was a 5-foot setback on the plans which were approved? Is that a fair assumption?
Well, I would say it's fair, but at the end of the day, then, when the inspector said it's supposed to be 5 feet, and then I pull out the plans and I can see it says 5 feet, and I'm like, oh my God, you know? So they did not seem to have any sense of that, unfortunately.
Okay. And I guess my final question, just to make sure that I'm understanding correctly, and this is to the administration, the 5-foot side yard setback, that's going to be the smallest setback that we have in the city for residential lots?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Pollyea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question regarding, just for clarification, kind of going off what Mr. Mako was saying. The second contractor is the one that dug this foundation and was doing that off of plans that were approved before he was hired.
Yes,
So the error was this contractor, correct?
that's correct.
Have you, I mean, he essentially quoted you $8,000 to $10,000 to, is that something that he's maybe willing to assume responsibility for? Have you had that conversation?
I did not push that conversation. He's aware that I'm suing the first contractor who had the mistakes on the inside of the house. And so I did not approach that with him because he actually did a lot of that extensive work on the inside of the home and got that so I could move in. The first contractor had promised me that I would be able to move in, and then I was homeless for 2 weeks, which I really don't like at this point in my age and situation, because it just was not ready. So he did a lot of work for me to get me in my home.
Right.
So I appreciate that, and I haven't had that conversation if he's going to kick in anything for that. I think he felt, though, that it was going to be a lot of very labor intensive because it's got all that concrete and rebar in that foundation.
Right, I don't disagree with that. I'm just, I mean, as far as liability goes, I mean.
Right. No,
Have you asked him whether he has insurance? I assume you've asked him that when you hired him?
So he says he's bonded, but I've learned that that has a variable meaning, I think, in the insurance world, at least when I'm talking to my attorney about the first contractor. I haven't pursued it yet at this point. I mean, my first thought was to see if it's possible, since it's not a fire hazard and I can still get there to clean, for the councilman's question. That was my first thing, and then the next thing will be to see what I have to do after that.
Okay, one additional question. As far as getting in that area, have you thought about potentially doing something like maybe putting gravel down or something like that, so that it would not be able to be used for, like, if that's a concern, to be able to use it for storage or another structure or something like that? Have you thought about maybe, because, I mean, what, are you gonna put like grass there, or what's
No,
gonna?
my plan, so the driveway goes right up to that closest corner. And then there's going to be gravel in the 1 foot from the driveway over to the sideline. And then, yeah, my plan would be to then just gravel that and, of course, try to keep away from the trees that grew in there before.
So the plan is to put gravel there?
That would be my plan. It's not on this plan.
No,
but,
I understand.
but,
I was just,
yeah, I want it to be low maintenance and,
okay. No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like you have retained legal counsel, which is a very good idea.
For the first contractor,
Well, you have legal counsel.
Sure,
so-
I do.
And you said you have not pressed the issue with the second contractor. What did the second contractor say when you confronted them with this error?
he mostly said, "Oh, geez, oh my," and that's what I got. So, yeah.
So acknowledge the error, but that's as far as it's gone so far.
Well, even when I try to, I say, well, here's the plans, and he says, well, it's really small. And I'm like, well, can't you enlarge the plan? So, anyway.
All right, Mr. Mack, thank you for your time.
Thank
Those
you.
are the questions I had. Is there any further questions from the commission? Seeing none and hearing none, is there a motion for this application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve item V-0013-2025.
Thank you, Mr. Mako. Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Shipaka?
Second by Mr. Shipaka. Any discussion on the motion, starting with Mr. Greenberg?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Soriano?
Mr. Mack, I think this is really unfortunate. And I think given the size of the garage and the fact that we already have a really tight side yard setback of 5 feet, which is not a lot, 3 feet's even less, I don't think this is your responsibility to fix. I think it's your contractor's responsibility to fix, given that you had approved drawings. That's why we do them. So I'm not going to be in favor of this variance.
Mr. Tamarkin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Soriano. I think the drawings were approved. A contractor made an error, but it's a tough precedent for us to set with a 3-yard setback or a 3-foot setback on a side yard. If we allow it once, it's going to come in front of us again. And I think we have made exceptions for side yard setbacks on this and that, but 3 foot to the property line is very tight. So I also am going to be a no vote on this.
Mr. Shipaka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Precedent, that it resonates with me, but I would say that you went and got a permit up front. You did everything that you were, as a homeowner, was expecting to do. You had a contractor made a mistake. Nobody's dying, nobody's bleeding. It's not a life kind of a safety issue. So I'm clearly, excuse the pun, but I'm on the fence on whether to go with it or not. But I think the homeowner acted with good actions, and I don't want to penalize him for that. If you can go after the contractor, you can, but 2 feet, if you did not go get the permit beforehand, I would be against it, but considering the circumstances, I'm in favor of the variance.
Mr. Mako?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I completely and totally empathize with the homeowner. It's not a very good situation to be put in, but in my mind, the criteria to support this variance has not been met. I do think that the responsibility here relies on the contractor who made an error, and I'm just telling you, giving you my 2 cents. I think it's up to them to rectify their mistake. But in terms of our zoning code, I just don't think that I can be in support of this, so I will be a no vote. Thank you.
Ms. Pollier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with Mr. Mako, pretty much exactly what he said. I think this is a legal issue, unfortunately. I also wholeheartedly understand and empathize with you as to I don't think you did anything wrong. I think you did everything right. The only thing that I think you did wrong was the second contractor that you hired. Maybe you should have done a little bit more due diligence just to make sure, maybe he understood what the plans were, or understood, whether he had the proper insurance or things like that. But again, this is not your fault. This is your contractor's fault. And I mean, I'm a real estate attorney. I see stuff like this a lot. And I would just encourage you to meet with your legal counsel and see what your options would be as far as, as compensation from the contractor for something like this. And I also, given that, would not be in support of the variance.
Thank you. I would add that, no one up here, with one exception, practices law, and none of us are your legal counsel, so definitely pursue that as you move forward. But in my opinion, the criteria for granting a variance are not met, and so I will also be a no. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Mako.
No.
Chappaka.
Yes.
Pollyea. No. Suriano.
No.
Tamarkin.
No.
Greenberg.
No.
Hicks.
No. Motion fails. We'll now move to the design review application, and I'll ask the clerk to please read that into the record.
That is DP-0002-2025 to consider a development plan application for property located at 817 North Hamilton Road, parcel ID 025-001918, current zoning RI restricted institutional, One Church, Tony Torres applicant.
Thank you. I said design review. I clearly meant development plan, so thank you for correcting me. We'll now turn the presentation over to the administration for their
Chair Hicks.
remarks.
Chair, I should read the second one as well,
Oh,
the variance with it.
Thank you.
Yep. We have V-0014-2025 to consider a variance application to vary sections 1109.01A1, location of parking areas, 1109.01J, electric vehicle charging, and 1109.04C, buffers and screening of the codified ordinances of the City of Gahanna for property located at 817 North Hamilton Road, parcel ID 025-001918, current zoning R1, restricted institutional, One Church, Tony Torres applicant.
Thank you. Now we'll turn it over to the administration for their presentation.
This project includes a major development plan and variance application. It is at 817 North Hamilton Road, which is the One Church site. So there's a lot of development history on this site, so I'm going to go over some of the history that's applicable to the applications that we're reviewing today. In June 2017, there was a design review application for 219 new parking spaces on the site. Then in April 2023, there were design review and variance applications for the northeast parking lot with a condition added for some additional screening. This increased the total parking count on the site to 543 spaces, which is where it sits today. In May 2024, there was a design review application for some exterior modifications to Building C. That application did not include any parking changes. Then in June 2024, there were design review and variance applications for the temporary gravel lot with approximately 60 to 70 spaces that is located in front of the main church building. The deadline or the timeline for the variance approval ended in December 2024. They requested a continuance through another variance application in January, and that one was denied. In August of 2024, there were final development plan design review and variance applications for a new auditorium, around 342 new parking spaces, and the removal of 187 trees, and those applications were denied. Some of the reasons for the denial were concerns from residents and some planning commission members over screening between the parking lots and the adjacent residential properties, as well as some concerns from city staff on the reduced amount of parking lot landscaping. Since the new applications, there have also been some code changes. We adopted a new zoning code in May of 2024, and any applications filed after that date must comply with the new code. Since the previous applications from August of 2024 were denied, they had to resubmit under the new code. So there are some new zoning code requirements that apply to this project now that did not previously. One of those requirements is for buffering and screening. There is now additional screening requirements between institutional uses and residential uses. Previously, there was only screening required between parking lots and residential, but now because it's for institutional uses and residential, Screening is required around almost the entire perimeter of the property except for along Hamilton Road. There's also a new requirement for one EV charging station per 25 parking spaces. That equates to 16 total EV charging stations in this case, and the applicant is requesting a variance for that requirement. The last new requirement is there can be no new parking areas in front of the main building on the site, and this proposal does include one new parking lot that will be to the front of the main building in the southeast corner of the lot. So for some more information on the application, as mentioned, it includes a major development plan and variance for a new auditorium and parking lot expansion. The auditorium is approximately 19,500 square feet and will be attached to the front of the existing church building to the east. The primary colors for the addition are white and gray with an accent of chestnut siding. And then the total parking space count with this proposal is 785. The zoning code requires a minimum of 280 spaces for all uses on the site. So this site does exceed that minimum. And then none of the existing parking areas are being modified except for the lot in the west, which is being removed and relocated. Here's some more information on the landscaping proposed with this project. There will be 61 trees located in the parking lot and around 11,000 square feet of parking lot landscaping, which does meet all of our interior landscaping requirements. They're also providing an additional 186 caliper inches of trees for some requirements that are in Chapter 914, which is reviewed by our Parks Department. They're also proposing a 6-foot-high white vinyl privacy fence around the entire exterior of the property except for along Hamilton Road. They are removing 65 existing trees for the new pond, South Drive, and the northwest parking areas. However, 122 trees will still remain after the 65 are removed. Here is a chart comparing the previous proposal from August to the one that we're reviewing today. The total number of parking spaces with the previous application was 885. Today's is 785. The total new parking area was previously 290,000 square feet, which included redoing that main parking area just north of the church, which is why there's such a large difference between that and the current proposal of 119,000 square feet. The parking lot trees for the first proposal was 45, which required a variance. Today, they're proposing 61 trees in the parking lot. Parking lot landscape area is going from 16,000 to 11,000 square feet, and that difference is for the same reason as the new parking area. Since they're not modifying that main parking area, it doesn't trigger any additional landscaping there. And then they're removing 65 trees with this application. They previously were going to remove 187 trees. And then the size of the addition went from 22,000 square feet to 19,500 square feet. This slide compares the two site plans. You can see on the left and the right, there's still two parking areas in the southeast and northwest corners. However, there are less parking spaces in those areas. And you can also kind of see the differences between the main parking area on the left and the right. So the one on the right mirrors what's there now versus the one on the left was a modified parking area with additional landscaping. Here is the site plan for the proposal today. Here you can see the location of the new auditorium in between the existing building and Hamilton Road and two new parking areas. The parking area in the southeast corner requires a variance since it's located to the front of the main church building. That parking area actually does line up with the northeast parking lot, which you can see with the red line that I put there. And then the fence is shown in purple around the entire exterior of the site. Here is a tree survey. This shows which trees are being removed. Anything shown in red is being removed, and then the black circles are all the trees that will remain on the site. One thing to point out is that the majority of the trees that are remaining are located around the exterior of the site. Here are some elevations of the auditorium. The one on the top left-hand corner is what would be visible from Hamilton Road, and the bottom right-hand corner is the front elevation of the addition. So you can see that the colors of the addition match with the existing church building, as well as the accent color. Here's a rendering showing what the site would look like after construction. And then this is the major development plan criteria that must be met in order for the application to be approved. The development meets the applicable development standards of the zoning ordinance. It's in accord with appropriate plans for the area. It would not have undesirable effects on the surrounding area, and it would be in keeping with the existing land use character and physical development potential of the area. And this is the variance criteria. One thing to note is that these applications were filed before the 2 new variance criteria were added, which is why there's 2 less than the previous application. There are 3 variances included with the variance application. The first is that parking areas cannot be closer to the front property line than the front of the primary building. As shown on the site plan, there's 1 parking area to the front of the church building, and it's located 27 feet from the front property line. The next is that there's 1 EV charging station required per 25 new parking spaces, which would be a total of 16 spaces for this project. The applicant proposes 0 EV charging stations and instead would like to install an electrical power pole location in case they have any EV charging needs in the future. The last is for buffering and screening requirements, which states that there must be 55 trees within 10 feet from the property line to count towards buffer requirements. There are no new buffer trees proposed. However, as shown on the tree survey, many existing trees along the property line will remain. Staff recommends approval of the major development plan as submitted. The application meets the criteria and was revised to address concerns from the Community Planning Commission and city staff. As mentioned, there will now be a privacy fence around the entire property, and the parking lot landscaping and tree planting requirements are now met as well. Approximately 122 trees will remain on site when the former application would have removed all of those trees. The addition is also compatible with the existing buildings on the site in both design and use, and the auditorium is 3,000 less square feet than previously proposed. Staff also recommends approval of all 3 variances. As mentioned, the parking lot to the front of the church building is in line with the existing northwest parking lot, northeast parking lot. And the applicant states that that parking area cannot be set back any farther due to topography changes between the lot and the auditorium. And although there are no new trees being planted for buffering requirements, around 122 trees will remain, many of which are along the property lines. One thing to note here is that the trees that are remaining on the lot are not eligible for preservation credit since construction is occurring within 10 feet of the trees, so there is a chance that some could be damaged during construction, but likely many of those trees will remain. And there's also the 6-foot-high privacy fence, which will help mitigate negative effects of the parking lots. And the applicant states that EV charging stations are not compatible with the main use of the site, since visiting vehicles are typically only parking for approximately 1 hour during church services. And as mentioned, they'll have an electrical power pole location if any EV charging stations are desired in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open the public comment portion of the application and ask if the applicant would like to come forward and speak. You will have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. My name is Tony Torres. I'm the architect and applicant. My office is located at 106 West 4th Street in Santa Ana, California, and I'm representing the church at 817 North Hamilton Road. Maddie's done a great job of covering everything. The thing that I wanted to focus on is just the changes that have been done to the design to address the neighbors' concerns. So 3 main things are that we've reduced the parking spaces by about 100 spaces. The size of the auditorium has reduced in size. A fence, a vinyl fence, a 6-foot fence is surrounding the site now. And we've removed all the parking that's facing the property line. So all the parking now occurs within the planter islands. So 8 months ago, when the original application was denied, the church tasked us, the architect, the civil engineer, and the landscape architect to come back with a new design to address the neighbors' concerns, and that's what we did. So I'm here for any other questions, but I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Please stay tuned. If I do have a few speaker slips, so I will read the ones that I've received, but there will be an opportunity for anyone from the public to address the commission before the meeting concludes. The first speaker slip is Pete Ferguson. So if you could please approach the lectern, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Pete Ferguson, President of Castle Pines Condo Association. I live at 386 Castle Pines Drive. I am speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors about what One Church has done as a good neighbor to us. Thank you very much for what you did previously. After a few years of discussion, One Church installed 2 sections of white vinyl fence that blocks the view of their newest parking lot, which is in the upper right-hand corner of the drawing. They put in 2 fences, which we really appreciate, and we want to thank One Church for doing that. On a new note, I would like to now have One Church to complete the fence, that is the 2 new sections, by closing up the 3 to 4 foot opening that we have between the 2 fences. One fence runs east and west from Hamilton Road to Building 9. The other one runs north and south from their existing parking lot up to Building 9. And there is a section there that was not filled in. When they built it, it was a little bit unusual because there was no way to run the north-south fence to get it far enough north to cover the east-west fence so we could put them together. That's why it was about 3.5 to 4 feet section. They could come in and put in a new piece of white vinyl that would probably fill that hole in very easily. The problem we see is there have been church attendees using that hole cut through, or using that section where the fences don't join, to cut through our property to get to the doctor's office parking lot, which they have to use now because of their large attendance on Sundays. The attendees of One Church are walking behind our condos, are coming down off the church parking lot, walking through the trees and things that are there now and that the doctor put in, coming onto our property, walking down the back of our condos, and walking down across the street and going through the opening that's in the fence. We would like to see if we could stop that to and from One Church and go up and use Hamilton Road sidewalks that are there existing now. Next, we would like to know if there is a traffic plan any different than the one now used to exit and enter the church for services. The church does put, and it was thanks to one of their church members, a do not block driveway sign on attendance days on Sundays for services. But again, most autos do not respect the sign, and many times we have to wait to pull out onto Hamilton Road to go to our churches or to go to whatever we want to do on Sunday mornings. Sometimes it's a longer than necessary wait. Remember, South Hamilton Road is 2 lanes. The inside lane turns right into the church. The outside lane goes south on Hamilton Road at 35 miles an hour. So we have to be very careful.
Mr. Ferguson, your time has expired. Do you have, are you able to wrap up your
Almost
thoughts?
done.
All right, please
Yep,
continue.
just a couple of minutes. This is a very dangerous exit to
Did
our
you say a
condo.
couple minutes?
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
Let me do one more reading. Another is the pond, and the pond is very important to us because the pond, we don't think the pond should be moved. We think it's a spring-fed pond that has been there since before any of us were born. That was our one major thing. We thought city engineers ought to readdress the removal of that pond. And then lastly, but not least, how many parking spots does One Church really need? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker slip is Christy Nelson.
My name is Christy Nelson. I live at 406 Castle Pines Drive, and I have 3 issues to present. The first one is a sound issue. This past April, a church band was practicing on the recently constructed outdoor stage. The music was amplified and quite loud. Following a call to the church, the amplified speakers were discontinued and the sound came down, which we very much appreciate. So thank you for doing that. Going forward, we request that that stage not be used for musical performances or other presentations, particularly using microphones. This creates a disturbance in the neighborhood due to the stage being just about 65 feet to our closest condominiums. In addition, we request that the new construction plans not be approved if they include any outside speakers or any connections for amplified sound that could go into the communities. My second point is light issues. May I have the photographs, please? This is a first photograph. This is a very large projection screen facing the Castle Pines property. The screen is typically on until about 9 o'clock in the evenings. May I have photo 2? Currently, there are small buildings between Castle Pines and the one church which block much of the light from that screen that would be going towards the condo. However, the current plans being considered today include removal of those small buildings. May I have photo 3, please? This photo shows the view from the northeast parking lot, and the arrow, which you can barely see, but it's white in the upper right-hand corner, shows the condominiums that are closest to that screen. If those buildings are removed, as it is in the current proposed plan today, a great deal of light will be coming directly into those units. So we request that the fence along this area would be much taller than what's being proposed in the plan being presented to you today, or that the projection screen be turned off at dusk rather than 9 o'clock at night on a year-round basis. My third and final issue is traffic pollution. If we could have photograph 4. This is from the development plan, and we added where the 2 Castle Pines buildings would be up there in the red. So this drawing shows the proposed plan, which shows the small buildings removed and the location of that new drive, which is very close to those red squares that we added. One church has a very large congregation, as we know, with 3 services scheduled on Sunday mornings. So between about 8:30 in the morning to 2 o'clock or so in the afternoon, there is a lot of traffic coming in and out of this property. I have just a few more comments, if that's all right.
Please continue.
So what we have there is that all of that traffic coming in, the north entrance, which is the entrance in, and the south entrance is the entrance out. So we have a great deal of traffic. About 2/3 of all the cars coming in go right past those 6 condo units. That represents about 450 cars on a Sunday morning. So we request either the plans for this new drive be denied, or the fence along this area be much taller than the current proposal. A taller fence would not only help this exhaust issue from all these automobiles, but would also improve the sound issue and the light issue, as I previously mentioned.
Thank you. The next speaker is Shar King.
Hi, I'm Shar King, and I live at 305 Eastchester Court. We live at the top of the parking lot next to the condos. We're still concerned about drainage. We asked for the sewer tests, and we got a remark and the drainage plan, but we just want to make sure that we're not going to have a water issue back there. Secondly, the fence, we're concerned about, well, a white vinyl fence isn't very attractive. I do like the fences they used for their stage, but I'm sure that's more expensive. But I would prefer something that looks more like nature, but we're concerned that it's going to be in the ditch where the swales are. So the 6-foot fence will not create any buffer. So we just want to make sure that we're getting adequate screening and buffer from the parking lot. We would like to have possibly a taller fence. And then also, I know they're going to keep a lot of the trees, which we appreciate. However, in the comments, it said that during construction, a lot of them can be torn out. And if you see where the concrete's going to come right up to our fence, I'm going to assume they're going to destroy all the trees behind my property. So if, in the event that that happens, I would like adequate screening or buffer for them to replace trees if they remove a lot during construction. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker slip is Lauren Sparrow.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Lauren Spiro. I live at 313 East Chester Court in one of the properties immediately adjacent to the pond in the northwest corner of One Church's property. First, I want to acknowledge the work that Ryan Breath and Brent Allen have done at One Church to improve communications with us. I do believe we've made progress and are more collaborative neighbors, so I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate that. When we left the August Planning Commission meeting, I had three main concerns. The first was the safety and security along our property line. The second was a row of parking spots that were slated to be just a few feet from our property line. And the third was moving the well-established pond to build the parking lot. I'd like to thank Ryan and Brent and the updated city code for addressing the first two concerns. So I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity tonight to once again encourage you all to not approve the plans to remove the existing pond. I can appreciate how easy it is to look at some diagrams on a screen and provide a stamp of approval that allows One Church to develop their land as they see fit. When I look at the paper, I completely empathize. However, when you stand at any one of the surrounding properties and think about paving over that existing pond, it just doesn't make sense. I'm hard-pressed to believe there isn't another way to accomplish their goals of adding parking while leaving that well-established wetland in place. Of all the people that have paraded our property line to see things from our perspective, even those in favor of One Church's expansion plans, not one person has said, yes, I think this is a great idea. This totally makes sense. I'm concerned that moving the pond will further exacerbate well-documented flooding in the area and eliminate critical green space that is quickly disappearing from Gahanna. Should you decide to move forward with approving the development plan, including relocation of the pond, I ask that you not grant the screening variance. The staff report states there's now a privacy fence around the exterior of the site to help block any light and sound coming from the parking area. This fence is essential for security purposes, but to be clear, it will not block any light or noise, given the elevation gain from the church's property to surrounding homes on East Chester Court. The best screening for light and noise, which are a significant concern, will be trees, both mature and ones that can grow to provide cover over time. So I ask that you require One Church to plant the 55 trees that are required to provide, or required in the code, so we have some sort of screening from light and noise. I'll close by reiterating for Brent and Ryan that my advocacy today is not personal, and I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish for your parishioners. I just need this planning commission to understand that these plans will have a significant negative impact on surrounding neighbors, and I do hope that you don't take your decision today lightly. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Josh Weiner.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Josh Weiner, and I live at 313 East Chester Court with my wife Lauren, who just spoke, and our two young children in one of the properties immediately adjacent to the pond in the northwest corner of One Church's property. As I stated in August when I spoke before you last time, I'm not opposed to the church's desire to expand its facilities, its operations. However, I am very concerned about the impacts that the church's plan to remove the existing pond will have on the well-being of my family and our community of neighbors on East Chester Court. Although I continue to oppose the removal of the pond and believe that it will have undesirable effects on the surrounding area, I do want to give the church credit for doing a better job of communicating with us following the Planning Commission meeting last August. I see the church has made changes to their plans to help mitigate the safety and privacy concerns we raised, and I appreciate them taking those concerns seriously. We've held multiple productive meetings with Ryan Breath and other church officials since August, and I am hopeful that the positive relationships we've developed will continue going forward. I do continue to believe, however, that removing the pond would be a harmful mistake, and after reviewing the church's updated plans, I want to raise a couple of specific concerns and questions about issues that could affect my family and our property. First, I continue to have significant concerns that the removal of the pond will result in increased flooding and drainage issues on my property. A few days ago, Ryan shared the drainage exhibit for the new plans that shows the location of the proposed new swale and depicts how water will move through the system. However, I did not see the drainage exhibit included in the materials posted on the Planning Commission's website for the meeting, which does raise a question in my mind. That's to what extent have the Planning Commission staff and the City Engineer's Office reviewed the updated drainage plans to ensure that they will not result in increased flooding and drainage issues for the properties that are adjacent to the current pond. And the second item I wanted to raise is that first, I am very pleased to see that the church is no longer planning to remove many of the existing mature trees along our shared property line. That's a welcome change and appreciated. However, I did see in the Planning Commission staff report that these existing trees are at risk of being damaged during the construction, given their proximity to the work that's going to be done. So what happens if some of these existing trees along the property line are damaged beyond repair during construction and have to be removed and thus are no longer able to provide the planned screening? Before approving the church's request for a variance to the buffer tree requirement, I asked the commission to consider adding a stipulation to require the church to plant new buffer trees to replace any existing trees along the property line that have to be removed because of damage that occurs during the construction process. So in summary, while I appreciate the steps taken to help mitigate some of the negative impacts of the church's plans, I continue to encourage the commission to direct the church to come up with a new parking proposal that would not require the existing pond to be removed. Thanks again for giving me the time to speak tonight.
Thank you. The next speaker slip is Brian Hoffman.
Good evening. My name is Brian Hoffman. I live at 295 East Chester Court. These are my neighbors who you just heard from. The plan before you tonight contains several positive revisions from the one that you rejected last year. I appreciate your action then. It seems that the church worked to apply what they understood from messages coming from you, staff, and from my neighbors. This plan before you is improved. I still have concerns, and they are similar to the ones that you heard last time. I want to start with the privacy fence. This is a great improvement, but in this, we see these two-dimensional top-down representations that don't really show what it looks like in 3D. In reality, the church's land slopes downward from Hamilton Road. Our houses sit above the church's property largely. The privacy fence is only going to work so far as we're at 6 feet or under it. And for a lot of our property, we're not, and depending on how swales are put in, that may change more. That's why for us, keeping existing natural screening is so important. Our most effective barrier is nature. Currently, we have older trees, we have some brush growth there. That really is effective at screening the church 6 months out of the year. This plan calls for retaining the trees that are outside the fence line, and this is great. But let's go a little bit beyond what's on the documents here. A longstanding concern myself, my neighbors, has been how the church will alter the slope of their property when they move the pond. The pond is at a natural low point, and this will allow for drainage to where the new pond will go. Runoff from our property is going toward that existing pond. The church does have a drainage plan, which we did request for them and we did receive, but it's just ended up raising questions for us. We're kind of unclear where we are with city engineers approving that drainage plan and how it may affect our properties. We also are unclear on how what will happen to existing trees as that pond is filled in, as the new fence is installed, and what will happen should any of these trees be damaged during this process. Now, somewhat unfortunately, we know the issues in the history that the church had with screening next to Castle Pines and a number of years that it took for that to be resolved. And I think that's why we are here now in such numbers talking to you guys before we have to deal with the situation again. Right now, there's a variance before you to not have trees added along the property edges. I'm going to ask that you reject that. And I also am going to have some concerns about how the water is being managed through the installation of proposed swales. This was not in the plans presented here. It wasn't what was sent to us. There are some swales inside the churches or inside the fence on the church's property, and there are some that are outside. And it's unclear to us right now how those swales will be installed without removing any existing trees.
Mr. Hoffman, we had a timer issue, and your 3 minutes is up. Are you able to wrap up your thoughts?
I am able to wrap up my
All right, please continue. Thank you.
So yes. In summary, I thank you for your action last year. I thank you for the church on working with us recently. I ask that you take a very serious look at the variance about not having trees along the property border and make sure that we are comfortable before approving this, that there will be no detrimental effect on the surrounding properties with runoff. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker slip is David Depew.
Good evening. My name is Dave Depew. I live in 317 East Chester Court. We are against, my wife and I, Marcy, we're against the pond being removed. We're also against, overall, we think there's too much being done on this property. There's too much parking. It's just oversized project. And we're also against, quite often, it's real noisy coming from the church. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker slip is Jay Bowman.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jay Bowman. I live at 336 Vista Drive. I just had a couple thoughts I wanted to share. I appreciate and agree with the section of the zoning code that requires parking lots to be no closer to the street than the building. Among other things, it helps promote a human-centered form of development, helps make the public spaces in the city friendly to all, not just friendly to automobiles. That said, in the case of this project, I do appreciate and agree with the reasoning for approving the variance to allow that parking in front of the building, namely the reasoning because it matches the existing conditions on the rest of the lot, and because it would have been allowed under the previous code, which the original submissions for this plan were made under. So I appreciate that. On a similar note of plan submission timing, with the electric vehicle charging stations, I think that installing conduit only with room for future charging stations is a good compromise between the code requirements at the time of original submissions and the new code requirements of installing the costly private automobile infrastructure on that private property. So therefore, I'm also in favor of the approval of that variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker slip is Laura Newman.
Thank you, Council. Laura Newman, 795 Cherrywood Place. I live on the cul-de-sac that backs up to the south end of the church, and I've been in my home for over 27 years. When I look out the back, there's all woods, and then what I see is what will be where the new pond will be. And then they're going to be putting that white fence up. And I feel that being a white would be very intrusive. I'd rather see it be dark green or brown, or if they are able to, just at least somehow make the back side of that dark green or brown, because I know they've already put the white up by the condos, so I would really like to see that considered, changing the color. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have no additional speaker slips. However, if there's somebody from the public that would like to address the commission, you do have the opportunity. I just ask that you complete a speaker slip before you leave tonight. So please come up to the lectern and state your name and address, and before you leave, submit a speaker slip to the clerk. And feel free to make your comments. You have 3 minutes.
I only have one comment. I'm Jill Martinowski. I live at the Castle Pines 376. My issue is the right-of-way of emergency vehicles on Sunday mornings or Sunday daytime to get into the Castle Pines, which more frequently we've needed. And it's a for me and the rest of the condominium. I feel it's a safety issue. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to address the commission? We'll now turn it back over to the applicant for any rebuttal comments. I'm sorry. We will close the public portion comments of this application and turn it back over to the applicant for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll address some of these, and then others I'll have the civil engineer address and the church as necessary. Regarding the item, the continuation of the fencing, obviously that's going to be addressed because there will be fencing that's going to be completely on the north, west, and south portions of the property line, so that gap is going to be addressed. Lighting issues from the screen, I'll let the church talk about that if they're willing to make any accommodations for when that screen can be turned off. It seems like they wouldn't be willing to accommodate that being turned off at dusk. So I think that can be addressed for the neighbors. The sound on the platform. So one thing is that the church is in compliance with noise ordinances about when they can have any kind of amplified sound. They immediately addressed the concerns and brought the sound level down. That was confirmed by the neighbors, so they are in compliance with that noise ordinance. And it was only, I think, between 5 and 6 p.m. It wasn't a late night ceremony. Light poles, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the zoning ordinances require that there's 0-foot candles at the property line from any kind of new light sources of the parking lot. So it shouldn't be casting any light into their backyards. In terms of the noise ordinance, the worship center is actually moving further to the east away from the neighbors, and there's going to be sound attenuation issues that are going to be addressed inside the building itself to make sure that there isn't a bleed of noise during Sunday services. So we feel like the position of the building is going to address that very well. In terms of parking requirements, I know that the zoning code says that I believe it's 3-to-1 on the parking ratios. That's kind of I do a lot of churches. It's a little bit outdated. A lot of times now it's more likely that it's 2-to-1 people in a car that's being driven to the church. So I think we're about 1,400 seats. So the current parking load is pretty much addressing a 2-to-1 parking ratio. If we didn't provide this parking here, it would affect more of the neighborhood around it if we didn't bring those cars on site. Okay. The color of the fence, I'm sure that the church is willing to work with the neighbors on that. I know that the continuation of the white is just because of what was already installed. And in regards to the pond, I'll speak a little bit to that, and then I'll have the civil engineer just address the rest of it. The current pond that's there was not a natural pond. I believe it was brought on there by the previous owner. As far as what the civil engineer can tell, it's just basically filled by runoff, not by a spring. It's also not designed to keep the water on site. So current city code says that you have to keep all the water on site. So the new pond design is actually at the place where the site naturally drains to on the southwest corner. So if anything, what it's going to do, it's going to help from water getting off the property. And if we can pull up the exhibit that we have, I believe that the neighbors had said it wasn't part of the original document. So keep going to the last slide on this one here. Right there. So there is a new swale that's going to be at the a portion of the northern part of the property line there, and there are also drain basins that are going to be installed to bring the water down to the pond, and there is a swale all along the western portion. So just to talk a little bit more about that, this plan is approved in terms, or is about to be approved, I guess, from engineering on the drainage. I'll have Sean Lanning come up to talk about that. He's a civil engineer.
Good evening, everyone. Sean Lanning, Verdantis, 1555 Main Street, Newark, Ohio. Yes, to kind of reiterate some of the notes I took here. Yeah, as far as that the pond goes, yeah, we don't know when it was built. We believe it was man-made. It's been there for a long time. It's not a natural spring, like I've heard. It's not. And we believe it was man-made. So and it's also not the lowest point of the site, just as Tony just mentioned, the southwest corner is actually the lowest point of the site where we're putting the new pond. And as you guys probably know, there's an existing park with another pond just off the southwest corner of this site as well. As far as any existing drainage issues that might be out there, you know, one of the things that we will do with this new plan is, see the open space in this site was never really designed to be, never engineered to drain properly, actually. So if there's any existing runoff there on any of these properties on a large rain event, that will be fixed with our site plan, because our site will have a swale all the way around, as is marked in blue there, that will catch any runoff of the parking lot, and then it'll be collected into our storm pipes, put into the new pond in the southwest corner, and then distributed back out to the natural water course, you know, in the future. So any drainage issues that neighbors may have will be fixed with the construction of this parking lot. So, and definitely no new drainage issues will occur. Also, the new parking lot will have dirt added to that area, because when we dig the new building for the new auditorium, that excess dirt will be put back there. So along with that, the sight line should be increased, because there'll be a little bit more dirt in that area then the new fence will be put on top of that, so which will make it just a little bit higher as well. So that should, you know, I don't know what the whole elevation, anybody can see or whatever, but for the most part, you know, the fence will be just a little bit higher than the existing ground that's there right now. And all in the engineering plans, I think our engineering staff is waiting till we get approval of this. I texted the head engineer. He said we're still about 60 days out from our resubmittal, but that's probably because we're waiting on this approval before they do any additional work, to make sure that they're not doing work that's unnecessary, you know, right now. So once we get approval tonight, then they'll continue their engineering plans, and you know, then go through they've had a lot of communication. Everybody knows what's going on with the staff of the city staff and everything, but that's what he said. It was about 60 days out for our resubmittal of our engineering plans. So I think that is everything that I had notes on. Is that right?
Thank you, Sean. Just one last thing to point out. I believe one of the biggest things that we were confronted with last August is that the church probably didn't hear all of the neighbors' concerns, and I think the neighbors themselves that have brought these concerns up still, you know, during this application, have all affirmed that the church has done good outreach in many ways. So the church is listening. They want to be a good neighbor, and I just thank the chair and the fellow commissioners for hearing us tonight. And that concludes my responses to the public comments.
Thank you. Before we move into questions from the commission, is there any objection to a brief recess for a bathroom break? All right. We're at recess, expecting resume our regular scheduled meeting. Thank you for your patience. And if I could have everybody's attention, please. We are ready for questions from the commission, starting with Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Greenberg.
Freudian slip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the first thing I want to say is I think I remember saying at the last hearing back in August that I wanted, or I thought the church should do a better job of communicating with the residents, and it sure sounds like that's occurred, and I appreciate the improved communications. I do have several questions. I guess the first one has to do with one of my favorite subjects, the dumpsters. So could you point out the dumpsters on the screen? Is it possible to highlight that? You can't do them out.
Not sure if there's a...
I guess my question, they should be easily answered. It looks like they're doors and they're surrounded
Yes. there's
by a
fence.
wall or a
There's-
fence?
There's a new trash enclosure being proposed with a fence around it with gates. It's
Right.
going to be totally enclosed.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. I guess some of my questions are for the administration as well. So, and it's dealing with the pond. And the pond is being moved. Is do we know what the amount of water and drainage it can handle and is being prepared for? Is it a 100-year floodplain, a 250, 500-year?
Everything's designed to a 100-year.
100-year?
Yes.
Okay. And for the administration, the city engineer is responsible for making sure that the pond is designed and adequately can handle the drainage. Is that correct?
Yes, engineering would review these plans.
So is this part of code for the planning commission?
We don't require any engineered drawings to be submitted with planning applications.
Right, so this is not a purview of our commission, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Second has to do with traffic, and I know on many of our projects, there's issues with traffic, and the city can do a traffic plan, traffic study, but is that the internal traffic on the property or egress in and egress out a purview of the planning commission?
No.
Thank you. And now I want to get to the, I guess, the fence. The fence, I guess the question from one of our commenters was there's a 3 to 4 foot opening in the northwest corner. Is that being remedied?
Yes, that's being remedied.
So that will not, there will not be a gap, and the residents that park in the doctor's office will not, well, unless they jump and hop over, right?
Sure.
Will not be able to get onto the property that way. They'd have to come down to the sidewalk on Hamilton Road and come in the entrance.
The design is meant for the fence enclosure to be completely on that northwest and south portion of the site.
Okay. I guess for the administration, as far as the height of the fence, what's code say about height?
The maximum height in this case is 6 feet, so they'd have to get approval of a variance to increase that.
So right now, they're meeting code with this plan?
Correct.
Okay. Let me just double check my things. I think I've covered all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Soriano, any questions?
I'm going to save, I actually don't have any questions. I do have some comments that I'll save for discussion.
Mr. Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of comments. I'm going to move through them pretty quick here. Will the fence have any gates?
There are no gates planned for the fence.
Some talk about a swale. We should see it here now, this in blue. Will the fence be in the swale, behind the swale, or inside the property line of the swale?
The fence will be outside of the swale is what it's shown right now. And maybe we can confirm that. It's hard to say because I see the fence line right now as being north of the swale here. On the west side, it's going to be inside of the swale. So there will be portions on the outside and portions on the inside of the swale.
And the swale is primarily there for drainage purposes?
That's correct.
For whatever does not drain on the concrete through the drains?
That's correct.
The existing trees, 122 existing trees, how many are on the inside of the fence? How many are on the outside of the fence?
I don't have that number. Spencer, would you have a?
Give me a rough estimate. 50%, 20%?
50? So half of the trees are on the inside of the fence and half of the trees are on the outside of the fence.
Okay. One of the variances you're asking for is to not put in 55 trees that are required. Give me some explanation why you think we don't need these 55 trees.
Sure. Those 55 trees are for a screening requirement as part of the new code. The fact that we have a 6-foot-high fence basically meets that screening requirement.
Okay. One of the other screening requirements is a 3-foot hedge, which will be in the, let's call this the southeast parking lot there. That'll be between the parking spaces facing Hamilton Road. Will that be a continuous hedge?
So again, I think that hedge is not part of the design. That's part of the variance because again, we're using a 6-foot fence as a screening element. So the other thing that we're doing is the parking spaces that were pointed towards the property line have been removed. So
Yeah, but I'm talking about the bottom right corner here where there will not be a fence because it's facing Hamilton Road and the sidewalk.
Oh,
I thought there's a hedge that goes there.
over here.
Go up where your pointer is,
Yes.
kind of go north-south there. Yep,
Oh,
yep, yep.
yes. That portion is being installed as per city code. Yes.
With a hedge of junipers, solid property line to driveway.
Yes. Sorry, I
Or
didn't
to curb.
understand where that was going. So yes,
Okay.
it is being installed per code.
I know it's not part of this. Will we see you again for signage? Is it on the new building?
If there is a signage permit that's required, then we will be providing that application as well, yes.
So there is plans for a sign at some point on the new building, which.
That's correct, yes.
Will be you'll be back. You're not redesigning any of the existing parking? Is that to not have to deal with the new code, or is it cost savings, or is it sufficient?
The existing parking lot is sufficient, so we don't feel like there needs to be a redesign to that portion, so it saves money.
So no redesign means no restriping other than, or no changing the way it is today?
I think the only striping that we're proposing is just to make sure that there's safe pedestrian access from the northeast parking, so you'll see some striping that's along there to be able to get people safely to the church.
Okay. EV parking, you have proposing 0. I understand most of your guests come for an hour or two. They're not going to charge their car.
Right.
It is certainly a trend. I assume a church this big has lots of employees or a number of employees. Is
Some
there really a
employees.
need for no EV parking, or is there a need for 2 or 4? You know, City Hall here has 8 EV spots.
Right now, just with the majority of the use of that, I mean, if there were 16 parking spots, for the parking spots were not going to be really used. I don't know that we've actually talked about how many parking spots could be in lieu of. We're ready for the future parking spaces, but we haven't talked about whether or not it's a condition that comes up for 2 or 3 parking spaces. It's hard to identify really how many church staff are on the site. So for 35 parking spaces, if we were to take a percentage of that, it's probably 1 or 2 parking spaces. Yeah.
My thoughts exactly.
Oh, okay.
And I know the water management's not really in our purview. That'll be handled by the engineering, but there's a lot of neighbors' comments about flooding. Engineer states, we think that will improve with the new construction.
We know that it will improve.
We know that will improve.
Yes.
Because of water management will be handled properly.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Mr. Shapaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it a pond or a detention basin?
The current one is a pond. It's not a detention basin. It was not designed to be a detention basin. The new one is a detention basin.
So it's not gonna have any standing water in it, it's just really there to collect it, hold it for a while, and then.
That's the
let
design.
it go
So,
just for
as
what
the
it's
civil
intended.
engineer pointed out, there is a natural waterway and another lake, or pond that occurs over here. Once the water's treated on site, taken out on any particulates, then it's just meant to go out to the natural waterway.
So not giving you a way out, but this is for the city. What is the rule of, if I have property, I can't create any, I have to collect the water that's on my property. It seems like the neighborhood is going on to this property, and you have to solve that problem.
Yes.
They
well,
should actually stop their own runoff and collect it, so it doesn't run on yours. But history has shown, and how it has been managed over, it is now your problem. I have faith in engineering. I think you guys can, it's simple math. You collect the volume that you have and you treat it properly. So I think you can address that problem. How much is this new lot gonna cost? I mean, what's the budget for it?
John, what would you presume for that new lot? Yes. The new.
I would say the new addition that you're doing currently. Yeah.
New parking lot?
Hearing you, I didn't pick up on it.
$3 million to do the improvements to the
So
parking lot.
$3 million to do the whole thing.
Yes.
So I've been on this board for about 7 years. I don't want to see you guys in 7 years. Let's put this to rest. Let's get a solution for this. How many more car spaces are you going to need? How many more, if you need to increase this space again, what's your option? Give me an option of what you're going to do on the next edition.
So I don't know that there's any future additions.
Add another location somewhere. So you would go to another location. So for us to be good stewards of the property that you have, can you just build a parking garage out front for $3 million and alleviate everything that's in the back? And you can add 400 more cars to that concept so that you could
Well, you could, but
expand?
you still have to address the drainage issues. So there's still drainage issues on the site that would need to be addressed as
Even
part
if
of
you
it.
just left it the way it is now, and just currently, everybody likes the pond, they want to keep it, you would still like to address that issue?
It flows onto their site, and the water's supposed to be kept onto the site.
So a parking garage idea is if you build a structure out there, there's your sound barrier between them and the neighbors. It doubles your parking space that you have there now. It seems like that might be an option. I'm just throwing an option out there as we're here to vet this issue.
Off the top of my head, I don't know that it would, if we build a parking structure, it wouldn't actually double the parking.
Was there a little serious thought? So if this got turned down, would that be something that would come into play?
I think the parking structure would actually, and I'm not a construction, twice the cost of that. Yeah, so it would be more money to do less parking.
Yeah. Because it seems like you're getting to the point now that your options are over after this, you're done. If it gets bigger, you guys are moving somewhere else. Well, if that's the case, what are you leaving behind for the next guy? You know,
You're not moving somewhere else, you're staying where you are, and then you're adding another location in another city for people to go there.
Yeah.
So we're not leaving, we're staying, we love 817 North Hamilton Road, Gahanna, Ohio, we're there. It's just maximizing the current space.
so 7 years or talking this over and over and over again, if it got turned down again, would you just consider expanding somewhere else and leaving it as is? Yeah, the answer would be no. I'm glad you said no. Just for the record. So again, for us to make a decision on that, I think the variances that you have, the EV, where would you put the EVs if you had to put them? I mean, would they be along the building on that South Drive, a very centrally located spot where you would designate those spots?
If we had to put a couple of EV parking spaces, it would be close to where the staff resides in their offices.
So your temporary one now, your poles are gonna go in that location to run conduit over?
Actually, right now, I believe the pull for the future EV parking spaces is right
Is
here.
all the way up there? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I commend you guys on working with the neighborhood, the issues and addressing them. I have faith that you are going to continue that dialogue and address the issues. And I hear stuff about traffic. You know, in my mind, you just tell the congregation, hey, be a little bit more considerate. It's posted, leave a space for the neighbors, education. For the glare that you're getting from the screen, you can put up a curtain, you know, in odd hours. I mean, they're all solvable issues, and it seems like you guys are always in a position to come up with a solution to do it. You answered my longevity thing. The other guys answered the other questions on that. Thanks, and Mr. Chair, good.
Thank you. Mr. Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few questions for the applicant. Want to dive in a little bit further on the drainage swale that's being proposed. Is that going to be grass? Is it going to be rock? What are your thoughts?
It's my understanding it's going to be planted out. There's going to be plants in the swale.
Okay. And the getting back to the detention pond, is it going to, again, just for clarification, is it going to be dry? Is it dry or wet?
It's going to be wet. There will be water in it at all times? Okay, there will be water in it at all times.
Okay. And do you design yours with safety benches? Yes. Okay, very good. I don't know who really to direct this question to, but I notice on your site plan on the extreme northeast corner of the development here, you're showing existing right-of-way, then proposed right-of-way. What's going on there? 10 foot?
Are you talking about at this portion over here?
Yes.
So it's our understanding that all improvements are staying outside of that right-of-way. So I don't know how to answer that unless you can have any answer to that, Sean.
Yeah, it was, the right-of-way up there is 10 feet thinner than it is on the south area. So the city staff asked us to add the 10 feet to make it even 120 or whatever. So it's 60 feet, you know, from the center line or something like that. And so that's what we did. We're just going to dedicate that little strip, you know, with after approval.
Okay, so you'll just be simply dedicating additional right-of-way, and there's really no plans to increase the size?
No other reason. No other reason, because it was a request from the city staff so that it matches what's on the southern part of the property. You can see it does jog a little bit. You know, there's a lot of lines in that area, but it is 10 feet different. And now it's going to be, you know, after we dedicate it, it'll be even across our property.
Okay, very good. Now switching to the southeast side, I know that we had before us a number of years ago the parking lot that was just, I'll say this is kind of arbitrarily put up and gravelled. And I think that ship has sailed, but what's being proposed now, kind of give me some idea about, is this space bigger or narrower than the gravel parking lot that's out there today?
It's my understanding it's going to be narrower than what the current gravel lot is, and we reduced the parking in that area from the previous design to be sensitive to the amount of parking in front of the building.
Okay. And then there was one of the residents brought up the concern about the color of the fence. Is there any architectural standards that the city has per code for fences?
Nothing that pertains to color.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Paulier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, I just have a few questions. But I first want to say, the last time you guys were here, which I guess was in August, and now, between then and now, I really do appreciate the outreach that you've done with the neighbors. Obviously, the neighbors do too. I think everybody that was up here speaking at least made that comment that they do appreciate that. I also really appreciate this little pamphlet that you provided. It is very comprehensive, just listening to what people said, and then what are the solutions, what have you done? What have you done to maintain the communication with everyone? And I think that, to me, that was a big issue when you were here in August, and I feel much better that at least you have those lines of communications that are open and that people are receptive and people feel that they are being heard. So thank you for that. Just a couple questions that I had. As far as the buffer and screening variance goes, why would you choose the 6-foot fence instead of just keeping the trees or increasing the amount of trees there? What's the reasoning for
I
that?
think the primary reason is that was requested by the neighbors to have a fence there, just to have a little bit of safety from a parking lot being near their property. That was the primary goal, is to appease the concerns of the neighbors.
Okay.
And of course, also too, it actually provides better opacity than trees that might take a little while to grow. So there was some learning lessons about how much the tree planting up against Castle Pines, and that there was constantly having to figure out, what the nature, maybe the trees weren't thriving or whatever. And so now the fence resolves that screening issue.
Okay. But in doing research, do you think that would have the same effects from shielding some of the noise and the light that some people brought up?
It's not meant to shield noise, and it's not meant to shield light. The lighting, the city code requires the lights to have house shields, fins on the backs of light fixtures.
Okay.
That's what's going to shield the light. The fence is not really made for that. It's not made for noise. It's just purely for visual screening.
Buffer?
Yes.
Okay, understood. And then as far as the trees that could be destroyed during construction, is there a plan to replace those?
We don't know how many trees might be destroyed during that process, so I'm sure the church can maybe take a look at and see, but they're trying to reduce the amount of trees that are being removed. You saw the amount of trees that were proposed in the original plan and how they're trying to keep as many as they can now. Maybe that can be looked at.
Okay. And then just one more question. As far as the sign, the temporary sign that's put up each week that says "Do not block the drive" for the Castle Pines, is there a way to install some type of a permanent sign there? I don't know if that's.
Is that off the property? Is it, because the current sign is probably off the property, right?
It is in front of the Castle Pines property. I set it up every Sunday for them to take it down.
So
Okay.
we would be installing a sign that's outside the property line of the project, so there's probably some sign ordinances for going through that process.
Okay, okay.
Sometimes I even stand there and point at it.
Okay. And then just one other question. Sorry, I know I said that was the last question,
That's all
but
right.
I just have one more.
Yeah.
The swell plans. You did say that you shared those with the neighbors.
Yes.
Did they have any comments or concerns about any of that?
I think they just had seen it recently.
Okay.
So they just wanted to make sure that the drainage was addressed, and it will be.
Okay.
Again, because they have to do a hydrology study. The current design does not meet code. The new design will.
Right, okay. Understood. Thank you. That's
Thank
all I
you.
have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the commission? Mr. Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just had one additional follow-up question I forgot to ask. So I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot of grading work that goes on here. You're taking out a pond, you're putting in some, a lot of impervious surface. Is your intent with the grading to use as much, I don't want to say fill material, but
To balance the site. The
Right,
intent
so-
is to balance the site so that we don't have to import or export too much. So I don't know if the site currently balances 100%, but the intent is to try to balance it as much as possible.
Okay, because really I guess I don't want to say concern, but the thought is that if you're going to be importing a lot of fill material, just what steps you would take to just, ensure that it's going to be, clean and environmentally satisfactory.
Well, there will be erosion control plans that are provided to the engineering department to make sure that whatever site is brought, whatever dirt's moved or brought on or whatever, stays on the site. But we are digging a pretty big hole for the pond, so that's going to basically displace the pond that's going to be filled. That's the intent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the development plan?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve DP-002-2025 to consider a development plan application for property at 817 North Hamilton Road.
We have a motion by Mr. Greenberg. Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin.
Second by Mr. Tamarkin. Any discussion on the motion, starting with Mr. Greenberg?
The only discussion, just to reiterate, I appreciate the church's ability to work with the neighbors as much as possible. I think that was very helpful, since the August meeting was a big concern that that was not happening. And I will be in support. Thank you.
Mr. Soriano, any comments?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be abstaining from voting this evening due to a conflict of interest, but I did want to highlight some observations. Number one, just reinforcing what Mr. Greenberg was noting about the communication and the outreach that One Church has done with neighboring properties. I think there's been a lot of accommodation and conversation that's happened, and I would commend them for that. On the kind of fence condition, city noted that the fence is meeting code for the height. Taller fences, could pose some unsightliness and some different structural issues that don't exist today. It's also, I would note that while it's not meant to block sound, typically that's a line of sight. If you can't see it, it's more difficult to hear. So I think that does do something. With regard to the drainage, Mr. Greenberg noted that this isn't really in our purview, but would reinforce just with, in doing some of this type of work, that a detention basin is an engineered solution versus a pond that wasn't intended to do that. So would kind of reinforce what the architect's noting about, and the civil engineer have noted about meeting the engineering standards for the city and for runoff and stormwater collection. And then just the tree buffer, just observing that the applicant has, significantly reduced the amount of tree removal on the site. And I think that with the privacy fence and with the kind of maintenance or trying to maintain as many trees as possible, that's going to provide the neighbors with actually a much better buffer than it would if you were planting new saplings, which I don't think anyone would be happy with. Those are some of my observations. As I noted, I'll be abstaining from voting.
Mr. Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to again commend everybody involved here, one for the communication, but also for the redesign. The back new parking lot, we were not happy with the way it looked. I think it was in August. You came back, you redesigned it, you removed all the parking spots that would be facing inward towards the fence, both north and west. I think at a cost of 100 parking spots, probably potential detrimental to the church. We're hoping that the existing parking works and we no longer have parking at the doctor's office, which is still causing neighbors problems, parking at the Ohio State Medical Center across the street, which causes more problems on Hamilton Road. And I hope that this parking lot is sufficient, and I hope it works, and I commend you for going in and redesigning it, hopefully to make everyone happy, even though I understand the concerns about removing the pond, removing the trees, removing the nature. Unfortunately, that is development and that is growth, and everywhere we all lived at one point were trees. So with that said, I will be in support of this design review.
Mr. Shapaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One Church here in Gahanna is a great amenity. It's a great institution for us to have. I wish you had 5 more acres around the site. But you'd probably grow so much, you'd pave that too. So I guess we're done. We're done. And I do have an issue with the development plan that there might be other options that you might be able to do with the detention basin. Have a racetrack around that instead of just dumping it over in one corner. But again, I have to tip my hat to the engineer. What he came up with would be the best solution for it. And so with that, I will be voting in favor of it, knowing that this is it. You guys shouldn't be in front of us again, so I'm not voting for it for that cause. It's just your property, you get to develop it like you want to. It meets our codes and our ordinances, so we really can't turn it down. So I will be in favor of the development plan.
Mr. Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also going to be in support of the development plan. Again, hats off to the applicant for reaching out and for redesigning what, last year I think had a lot of deficiencies. But that being said, hopefully this is not the end, but a continuation of the dialogue with the neighbors, because we all have to be good neighbors and we have to live together. And so if there are concerns that the neighbors do bring up, I hope that the church is open and willing to work with the people that have to live there full time. So again, much improved development plan, and I will be voting in support of this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Pollier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to echo what most of my colleagues said up here. I'm also going to be in support of the development plan. I do appreciate the outreach that One Church has done with the neighbors. I, again, really hope that continues throughout the whole process, and that the neighbors have a way to address concerns with One Church, and that One Church will actually do something. For example, closing this gap in the northwest corner of this fence, things like that. If there's a problem, to address it. I would hope that would continue on throughout this entire process. I do also really appreciate the great lengths that you all took to address a lot of the concerns that we had last August, to the point where it's, like I said, even the neighbors have come forward and said that they appreciate that. I think that there's never going to be a solution that everybody's going to be happy with. That's not really possible. But this development plan meets the code and has been redesigned so that it addresses many of our concerns. So for that reason, I will be in support of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we do have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Hicks.
Abstain due to a conflict of interest.
Mako.
Yes.
Pollier.
Yes.
Shapaka.
Yes.
Suriano.
Abstain.
Motion carries. As we move into the variance application, it is the consensus of Planning Commission that we will consider each variance separately. So is there a motion for the variance application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that variance 1109.01, little a, 1, location of parking areas be approved.
Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin.
So there's a motion on the application V14-2025 specific to the first variance and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Mr. Greenberg.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Suriano.
Mr. Chair, again abstaining, but would just observe that there's significant there's differential in grade compared to Hamilton Road to the eastern edge of the lot. There's a landscape buffer, and we also have precedent for this at Northeast Dermatology just north of this property, which is very similar to what's being proposed.
Mr. Tamarkin.
No comments.
Mr. Shapaka,
No comment.
Mr. Mako,
No comment.
Ms. Pollyea.
No comments.
Roll call, please.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Chapaca,
Yes.
Soriano,
Abstain?
Hicks,
Abstain due to a conflict.
Mako.
Yes.
Motion carries. Is there a further motion on the application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's variance 1109.01, little j, electric vehicle charging. I make a motion for approval.
Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin?
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Greenberg?
None.
Mr. Suriano?
No.
Mr. Tamarkin?
None.
Mr. Shapaka?
I think the logic that they have of the people that actually use this will not be there long enough, and to be able to put some conduit out there in case it's needed. I think they've been able to adapt to situations, so I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Mako?
No comment.
Ms. Pollyea?
No comment.
Roll call, please.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Soriano,
Abstain?
Pollyea,
Yes.
Hicks,
Abstain.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca.
Yes.
Motion carries. Is there a further motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the last variance, I make a motion for approval for 1109.04, little c, buffers and screening.
Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin?
It's been regularly moved and seconded. Any discussion on this motion? Mr. Greenberg?
None for me.
Mr. Suriano?
No additional comments for me, thank you.
Mr. Tamarkin?
No comments.
Mr. Shapaka?
No comments.
Mr. Mako?
No comments.
Ms. Pollyea?
No comments.
Roll call, please.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Hicks,
Abstain.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca,
Yes.
Soriano.
Abstain?
Motion carries. That completes the applications for this evening. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, fellow commissioners.
I will now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to consider?
No, sir.
Is there any new business to consider?
No, sir.
I will now move to official reports, starting with the Assistant City Attorney.
I wouldn't dare. Nothing to report.
Very brave of you. Director of Planning.
Yeah, there's a few items, but I don't know if we need a room to clear out first or,
Yeah, we'll take a minute for the room to clear. Thank you.
I'm just gonna do that and then.
Yeah, where's the sergeant?
Blackford, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just a couple quick items. I don't believe we have anything scheduled for our next meeting, May 28th. I believe the next meeting after that is June 11th. We're hoping to have a few new construction projects all in the Crescent Tech Center kind of area. They're all very close to finishing up the review process. We're very hopeful that they'll get through that, and so we can have some new projects before you. As we're just talking with this gentleman, some of the concerns we heard tonight were around traffic and such, specifically blocking of driveways, the Castle Pines Drive. I'll discuss this with our public service department and see if we can get some signage, do not block to drive signage or improved signage in that area. I think that's the very least we can do. I know that kind of stuff happens frequently and rather quickly. So we'll follow up after this meeting with some folks. And again, we can at least create awareness with some of those traffic issues and those concerns. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Council liaison.
Just a couple things. I'll be quick, I promise. One thing that seems to have been a major source of discussion, at least on social media that I've seen, is this annexation, this pre-annexation agreement that was approved by City Council on May 5th. And this brings 8 acres, which is the site of 4722 and 4736 East Johnstown Road, which is where Growing Solutions Garden Center currently is. This would bring that into the city from Jefferson Township to potentially bring a mixed-use commercial and multifamily residential development in that area. So this is just a pre-annexation agreement. There's still a lot of details and a lot more public hearings, a lot more discussion for this to actually happen, but this is the first step in the process. So that was approved on May 5th. And then just one additional item, there's still some, I think I brought it up in February, but there was some additional discussion regarding salaries of the city council members, city attorney, and the mayor. That took place this past Monday at the city council meeting, or I believe that was committee of the whole, my apologies. If you're interested, I'm not going to go into it, but if you're interested, please listen to that meeting on the city's YouTube channel, and I'm sure there'll be more discussions. This was not set for hearing or anything like that, public hearing, nothing. This is still continued for discussion. And that's all I have. Thank you.
So for the property that's being considered for in the pre-annexation agreement, the Planning Commission wouldn't have any annexation purview. However, will there be like some concurrent zoning applications with that?
Great questions, and appreciate bringing this topic up. Yes, because a little unusual. It doesn't happen a lot in Gahanna, where a development doesn't really start with Planning Commission or in the Department of Planning. The annexation process is a little bit different. Ultimately, we'll kind of figure out what those project details are, and we'll figure that out through the rezoning process. Ultimately, the goal of the developer is to have the annexation and the rezoning heard at the same time before City Council, and that preliminary discussions with the developer would be a general commercial zoning classification with a conditional use for multifamily, and we would suspect that there will probably be an overlay filed with that to kind of narrow down either some of the uses or density or building materials, things of that nature. So Planning Commission would see that before anyone else does.
Mr. Greenberg.
Just another question on that. Would other parcels beyond the garden center be included in the annexation potentially?
I believe at this time it is only, there is, I think, one other small parcel maybe that's in Jefferson Township that's adjacent to this, but that's a township-owned parcel. So I don't believe that this particular project would expand, but I know that there's, some level of inquiries along Johnstown Road just to the south of this, on both sides, east and west. There's some properties that are in Jefferson Township. So we periodically get inquiries about annexation. There might be additional annexations. Precedent was talked about earlier. There could be that for annexations as well.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mako.
Another follow-up question. Is it true that there is a pond on this site?
The rumor is that there is a pond on the site.
Okay, just want to get that out there.
Well, if my memory serves correct, some prior pre-annexation development created a lot of attention in the community. So it'll be very interesting to see how this one develops. No pun intended. I do not have anything from the chair's seat. So under correspondences and actions, I'll ask the clerk, please add the emails that we received to the public record for future viewing. And I'll turn it over to the board, the commission members for any comments. Any final comments, Mr. Greenberg?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Mr. Soriano?
None from me, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tamarkin?
Well-managed meeting tonight.
Mr. Shapaka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a personal note. By choice, I know a couple other members on the board lost a little bit of weight without choice. I'm celebrating my 40th anniversary down in Peru at Machu Picchu, and my family was so concerned that I was not healthy enough to make the trip to walk the mountain down there. So they encouraged me during Lent to lose weight, and I've lost 30 pounds at that time. So I'm hoping to maintain this by then for my 40th. So it was my choice. I'm not sick. I don't have anything.
Congrats.
Well done.
Mr. Mako?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, regardless of having a meeting next time, I will be on vacation, so.
Not approved.
Not approved.
I'm out next time too, sorry.
Oh, boy. Ms. Polly, any comments?
No, other than it's just kind of funny to see how this room went from pretty much full to 3 people. Other than that, no.
Anything else to come before the commission? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.